Yo, welcome everybody to your favorite 420 podcast. You already know who this is, your main host, Chino. Welcome to today's episode, everybody. Today it is, well, good morning as we are recording. Um, so whoever's out there, a little wake and bake action. Today's special guest we got is Mojo 420, aim higher as well. Welcome, my boy Johnny, correct?
Yo, what's up, man? How's it going,
Yeah.
man? Thanks for
All
having me,
right.
for inviting me onto the podcast, man. I'm
Mhm.
excited about the conversation today.
Yeah, for sure, my guy. And as well, if you guys seen the pod, you actually did appear on our special vlog for 420. So that's really, know, maybe it's just a familiar face for some people. But yeah, my guy. So you know what? Let's just kick it off and let's just get started with today's episode, man. Tell us about your brand and what you do in the industry.
Mojo's 420, kind of stumbled upon it by accident. So my wife is Monica, she's the Mo in Mojo's, and I'm Johnny, I'm the Joe in Mojo's. And really, when we started out on this, we didn't know what it was going to look like. Originally, our hope was to get a craft cultivator's license in the state. Like we had some partners that were interested in it, and by the time I had linked up with them, I had some pretty good experience with like cultivating and stuff like that. But then the pandemic happened, and then everything with state licensing, got messed up. So we basically dissolved that partnership, and we all kind of went on our own way. Um, but I was really excited about what I had been doing, and what everything that I learned along the way. And
Hmm.
I realized that um, that experience would have been useful to a lot of other people that were starting on that journey. Like either growing their own or starting to use cannabis. And so I was like, hey, you know what? I can kind of bridge that gap of information at least, like maybe I'm not a craft cultivator or a dispenser or anything like that, but I have a lot of like firsthand information, a lot of data that I collected over that time period where we were chasing that endeavor. And it was useful. I mean, it was really useful to me. It was useful to a lot of people in my immediate circle. But
Hmm.
then beyond that, as I started to circulate more in the cannabis community, I realized, hey, this is useful to like a much broader range of people. There are a lot of new consumers into the market that don't really understand cannabis. Like, and so that's what we did. We took everything that we had, and I was like, you know what, let's just turn it into an education business. And that's
Hmm.
what we've been doing, like learning different ways to cultivate, learning which are the most cost effective ways to do it. Because everybody that does it, that grows or uses or processes, it's for different reasons, right? Whether it's
Hmm.
medicinal, recreational, whatever. Um, but the science is the same across the board, right? So the better you
Yeah.
understand the science, the better you can utilize it for whatever your need is. And so that's what's been our focus over the last about 3.5 years.
Okay. And then I guess prior to like that team you were going to before COVID, like were you guys in the process of getting that application or did you guys already had that that license?
Well, I'm been a medicinal patient since
O-
like 2014, 2015.
Okay.
Um, so like when it became um, legal for us to grow, like then that's when it like kind of really took off. But before that, I was like learning about it a lot, like as a consumer.
Oh,
So
okay,
I
okay.
want to say I spent about a year and a half, almost 2 years, like studying it before I actually invested into it. It's just because that's how I operate. Sometimes I overthink things,
Mm-hmm.
but at least for me, it was like it was going to be a big upfront investment. So I wanted to make sure I was well versed in it, or as well versed as I could be. Um, and so that was really what it was. It was a lot of learning the first few years, learning like what it is as a plant, and then learning how to be able to produce it and process it.
Gotcha. And then I'm sure like based on everybody who grows, there's always different methods and just
Oh,
ways of growing. So with yours, like what is like your specific method or go to like is it more like with the soil, like traditional way, or you kind of go like throughout this other trend, like other methods?
Yeah, so I right now my preferred method I grow in living soil. So I've done like hydroponic grows.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried aeroponic grows, and then deep water culture. Uh, at least for me and for my experience level, when I tried those, they were a little bit more complex. And I have found working with soil for me as a cultivator, it's a lot more forgiving, and I like to experiment a lot. So I have less wiggle room, if you will, like if I'm doing hydroponics or aeroponics, stuff like that. Like those tend to be a lot more calculated in how you manage those grows. Um, and I like having flexibility, and soil gives me that. And it's fun, like
Mm-hmm.
it's fun being able to experiment with different levels of stress that you put on your plant to see what the different results are, different um, nutrients that you can use. Like currently, I'm using primarily like an organic line of nutrients.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and again, for the same reason, originally I moved away from organics because I was dealing with organics. I was dealing with a lot of like pests, a lot of fungus gnats, and so working with organic soil always gave me that problem. And I tried working with synthetics, uh, like, uh, but then the quality of my flower was a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
So very recently, in the last maybe year and a half, I moved back to primarily organic nutrients
Okay.
in living soil. They seem to, it just works great. It works great. It gives me a lot of room to try different things with different strains, different cultivars and stuff like that. So yeah, for me, that's my preferred method.
Gotcha. Because I honestly am starting to grow. I actually got two seeds that sprouted and are starting to grow. I'm actually growing outdoor. So
Okay.
I'm letting Mother Nature do its thing. So although I want to get really invested in all, like to see how it goes during the summer, but I guess towards the fall time, I'm for sure thinking of actually getting a tent, and I know it kind of makes the process faster and all than growing outside. But like for you as a cultivator, like what do you prefer, indoor or outdoor? Like,
So to be honest, so I've never fully completed an outdoor grow. So that's
uh
one of the things I'm working on this year.
huh,
So like one of the biggest problems that I have in the area where I live is I got a bunch of critters. So like skunks, rabbits, raccoons, like they're all over the place here. So the first time that I tried growing outdoors, I didn't even make it a month into my grow before it was like all destroyed by the animals.
wow.
Yeah, so this year, like I'm experimenting like to see what I can get going or how I can preserve a certain space that can be like, undisturbed.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's part of the learning process. Indoor, I mean, I've primarily grown indoor. I've only really fully successfully grown indoors, and I really like it because I like all the controls that I have.
Hmm.
And again, growing can be really simple, or you can make it more complex depending on what you want as a grower, like as your end result, right? It can be as simple as just add water and watch the result. But for most people, you're pushing, the most bang for your buck, right? You want the biggest return on what you're investing. And
Hmm.
so sometimes that, requires more feeding, it requires more care, it requires more control and stuff like that. But that comes with the experience, like for most people, I always encourage start the most simplest way.
Hmm.
And then as you develop your skill, like you'll learn, like it's all about like making mistakes and learning what works, what doesn't work for you, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
for sure,
because
totally.
some methods or some cultivars are better for say like extracts than they are for flour, and then some are better for flour than they are for extracts, and that all depends, on a bunch of factors. But you, as
Yeah.
a grower, you got to experience that. You got to go through the motions of it.
But I think that
So
that's like the beauty of it though, of like growing it, but as well like I think growing it to like consuming it is whole two different things. But like I think overall, like how you just mentioned, although some might be better for extracts than flour and vice versa. But then again, like I think that's why I think it's the beauty, because like we don't know until we actually try it, like until we we see what works, what doesn't work, or even within like for growing, like I kind of am just like not expecting as much because like this is my first time, but I really am just like seeking like for the like knowledge and just like learning as it grows, because like every time I go and check on it, like I'm just excited to see like what's the little difference on from like the previous day to today, or even from this week to last week. you
Yeah.
know.
And for me, like the fun of it comes, like I track everything that I do, right? Like I track how much I'm feeding, how much I'm
Mhm.
watering, what other controls like in my tent. And like now I have a CO2, so how much CO2 is at different stages. I have a meter for my lights, so I know how much uh, light is being spread out through the top of the canopy. So all of those things matter. But again, when you're getting started, the main thing is produce something, right? Like get it
Mhm.
to harvest. It doesn't have to be the biggest plant, the most buzz, but again, you'll learn. And if you're documenting the stuff that you're doing along the way, you'll be able to identify, what works or what doesn't, like, oh, hey, I did this process, but my yield was, so small. So for instance, when I first started growing,
Mhm.
in a 5 gallon pot, my typical yield was maybe about 3 to 4 ounces per plant. Um, but now, like in a 5 gallon pot, I can grow that same strain and get, somewhere between 7 to like 10 ounces per plant. But it's all about learning, what did I do different? What feeding schedule? What type of training and stuff like that? Topping or lollipop, like all those different methods and what the result is. And along
Yeah.
the way, don't get me wrong, I've made plenty of mistakes. So I made, some plants that, didn't make it to harvest,
Mhm.
some plants that hermaphrodite on me from overstressing them. So there's a lot to learn. Um, but the best thing that I would recommend to anybody is document everything that you're doing. And as a bonus for me, because I like knowing uh, as specific data as I can regarding my process, like
Mhm.
I'll take my end product and I take it to a lab and then I get it tested. Then that way, like I know everything from beginning to end, right? Like
Yeah.
as a cultivator and then also as a consumer, because my entry into this was more from like the medicinal side. So for me, it's important to know what's in it, like how much is in it.
Mhm.
Because that was one of the problems that I had when I first started circulating in the cannabis community. Like I would go to an event and then I would, there's edibles or there's
Yeah.
drink, whatever. And then I would ask, hey, what's the dosage on this? And then I get a answer something. Oh, it's like between 25 and 50 milligrams, or it's between 50 and 100 milligrams. I'm like, man,
Mhm.
that's a big ass range in terms of
Yeah.
potency. So,
Yeah,
so
especially
for
for
me,
a
it was
first
kind of
time
like, man,
consumer. You gonna
yeah,
get that man
yeah.
high as hell.
And that was the thing, right? Because like in the beginning, you take someone's word for it, but then by like
Yeah.
the end of the event, all you want to do is like sleep because you're like, damn, bro, like I don't even know how much I've consumed.
Hmm.
So for me, it was especially important to be able to understand like what the dosage is, right? And understand how making an edible changes the formulation, right? Depending on how that edible is processed, right? Like what temperature did you bake it at or cook it at, and for how
Yeah.
long, and all of that changes that profile. So it's not as simple. Like in the beginning, I would just use a calculator online, right? Like there's like
Hmm.
all these online calculators. If you have this much bud with this much THC, and then at the end you should have 20 milligrams per gummy or whatever. And
Gotcha,
I
huh?
did that at first, but when I realized that I could utilize a lab and actually take my product to go get tested, there was a significant difference between my math and
Their
what the
math.
result was that I was getting from the lab. Um, so then I was like, oh shit, the whole time I'm thinking I'm taking 10 milligrams, but realistically it's only like, 4 or 5 milligrams. Uh,
Gotcha.
um, so it's important, at least for me, again, from the consumer side, to be able to understand that. And that's one of the things that we try to teach, right? When I teach
Yeah.
someone how to process something, I teach them how to be able to calculate their recipe so that it's consistent across the board. Because if you're not using the right ingredients, it's not just as simple as like, oh, I have can of butter and I'm just going to throw this can of butter into this recipe and it's going to work. Because the science, right? The science
Yeah,
behind
yeah,
it,
the
like
hind, yeah, yeah.
knowing what emulsifiers you're gonna use and how those emulsifiers work in different applications, right? Like putting
Yeah,
it
because yeah,
into like a yeah, putting it into like a drink versus putting it into like a cookie or a brownie, right?
yeah, because like
Um,
with like the bakery stuff, you don't want it to overheat because at the end it's like you're just burning everything and you're not gonna really get high, you know. So yeah, there goes your weed.
Yeah. Well,
uh, s-
what happens in those
mhm.
high temperatures? So like as you burning off the different cannabinoids and different terpenes,
Yeah,
like usually the one that has the highest the highest temperature at which it burns off is like CBN, right? And if you know about cannabinoids, CBN is like it's a sleep aid. That's the cannabinoid that really helps you to like relax and fall asleep. And if that's the only thing that's left in your recipe when you eat that, it's gonna put you to bed. You know, you're gonna eat that brownie
yeah,
and you're gonna want to knock out. But if you don't understand the science behind it, right, that's where you have those mistakes or those fluctuations. So
gotcha.
the difference being if I make the recipe correctly and I have 10 or 15 brownies at the end, each one of those brownies is going to be 10 milligrams versus I made a batch and maybe this brownie has 5 milligrams and maybe this one has 50 milligrams because the mixture didn't
The
go through the entire
consistency.
recipe well.
Yeah, so I know that's it's just a lot of like just behind the scenes of everything. I guess the deal with cannabis that one really doesn't know, you know, like how you said they just think just putting the butter in there. But yeah, man. I mean, I think especially well if you're trying to make a good experience for somebody and all as well, you want to make everything to the dot, you know, like on point as much as possible. Because again, like we can't we although we could control it, but we can't really control that much of it, you know.
Yeah. Well, and what I try to avoid, so like in my experience talking to people,
Hmm.
the people that tend to be turned off by cannabis are people that have had a bad experience, right? And
Yeah.
usually, I want to say 9 times out of 10, when I ask those people, what was the strain? How strong was it? How was it prepared? Like, and you can't answer those questions, then it's like you're just rolling the dice, like who knows? You might have had a gummy and it might have been 100 milligrams instead of 10, if the
Hmm.
people can't give you an explanation for how it was prepared. And that's what I look for, right? Like as a consumer, because I come from the generation where we just eat stuff because people say, hey, eat this, it's good for you, or hey, drink this because it's good for you. But then, 10 years down the road, you find out it's full of sugar, it's full of crap, and that's the thing that's been, messing up your health. So for me, I want to be able to know that the person that's preparing it
Hmm.
understands the process and understands like what the health consequences or the health effects are of that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's the best way to fight, right, the stigma that cannabis has. Because if everybody's just out there rolling the dice on a recipe and people are having like mixed experiences, then how can I say with confidence, hey, you're going to be okay by eating this thing that I made, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And I
and so,
think that sorry, yeah, go on.
now I say
Uh,
it makes for a better experience for people, and it will like especially for novice people, it will allow them to feel comfortable in that space. And I'm not saying necessarily that cannabis is for everybody,
hmm.
but what I am saying is that cannabis has a lot of benefits. And I feel like a lot of people can benefit from cannabis, and it would be unfortunate to dismiss its benefits
Hmm.
simply because of like one bad experience.
Yeah, or
Um,
even the like the simple stereotypes of what cannabis is, you know, like what of all of them stereotypes that they had, you know, it has tag along, you know, from before. So even still now by, you know, just people in the public still. I mean, I kind of see it throughout like some part of the days too, you know, how some people are not really for it. But then again, it's like they don't know the really medical beneficials of what it can do. And then going back to like what you said of like a consumer like knowing like what your like consumption and like how much dosage it is and I agree that because like I started smoking too like where I used to have like like street weed, you know, like the plug, you know, like where they would have to say, where you would ask them and they'll sometimes have to say, "Oh, I got something like X, Y, and Z or something like that," and or they'll probably make it up on the spot, and you'll know because they can't really say a direct strain for it. And then if you think about it now, it's like sometimes if you smoke something that you smoked before and it has a total different taste to it or smell, you kind of start to think, did I even smoked that before or not? But then again,
Yeah, and
that's how it was though. That's how it was before, like where you used to get your what was it? Fuck your what was it? 10 a sawbuck. There you go for $10 or your two for
yeah,
15.
and that's the thing, like so one of the things that I've learned, right, as a consumer and as a ancillary cannabis business is that there's a difference between what's being marketed to you, like what's being sold to you
Hmm.
for just money's sake, right? Because right, cannabis is it's a big money business, right? And that's why everybody wants to be a part of it. However, the difference between what's being done or what's being marketed to you just for money's sake versus what is like factually and actually good for you, right? Or useful to you. Because a lot of the stuff that, from the marketing standpoint, are things that the producer can control, right?
Hmm.
In terms of like breeding seeds, pushing THC content. And so like everybody's chasing, oh, what's the highest THC potency? Like that's what I want. Because because the marketing, that's a measurable, right? That they can put in front of your face. And then, 10 is bigger than 5 and 20
Yeah.
is bigger than 10. So I could charge you more based on those numbers, right? And
Yeah.
that's not necessarily what is useful to the consumer, at least not in my opinion, right?
No, because like I think like even yourself might agree is that only because one has a high THC doesn't mean you're gonna get like higher or you'll get the highest because it's not true. I think that's not true. Might be for some buds, but not. I don't think it's for every single bud out there.
Yeah. And not just that, but I think that like as you hear more and more people talk about their experiences with cannabis,
Mhm.
a large number of the negative experiences usually revolve around some degree of anxiety or like an anxiety trigger. And to be honest, most often than not, the higher the THC percentage in that, that's usually what's going to trigger that anxiety for people who are more sensitive to that, right? So in those cases, for people who like are triggered, with anxiety with cannabis, I
Mhm.
always recommend go with the strain that has a lower THC content, or go with the strain that has like a 2-to-1 CBD to THC ratio to kind of mitigate that a little bit. Like there's ways around it, but again, it's a matter of people going through the process of experiencing it and understanding their body and their biology and how it's affected by cannabis. Because again, and ultimately, the effect is going to be dependent on your own biology. The effect is going to be dependent on your metabolism.
Mhm.
So you and me, we might be able to smoke the same strain, but we might feel it a little bit different. And that's mainly due to your biology. So I can give you like ballpark information, right? And
Mhm.
granted, the science is getting better as we invest more in research and development, right? But from what we know now, we can utilize that information to help navigate our experiences. The problem is not everybody's trying to spend the time to like read or study the weed. It's just like, give me that, let me
Mhm.
have my experience and move on, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's the gap that we hope to fill, for people that are interested in. Because again, not everybody's interested in learning.
That's true.
um,
Yeah, they're more interested in like getting what's like I guess good, in the industry or getting to the point where it's just let me smoke it.
Yeah. Well, that it's either that, like you're following the hype,
Hmm.
or two, you're following the price, because right now, if you look at the cannabis market as a whole, it seems like it's a race to the bottom when it comes to prices, right? Because for as much as you try to explain something to someone, all they want to know is how much does it cost, like,
Yeah.
can I get a $10 eighth, or am I going to have to pay $100 for an eighth? And it's very few, I feel like, consumers that understand the difference in those price points in terms of like quality and then like production, because there's a lot, right? There's a lot that
There
it
is a
takes.
lot, yeah, and I kind of understand that point because like then again, it's like you're yourself. You're the one who grew it. You know everything behind it, so it's you understand what's a reasonable price. But like for everybody out there as well, it's like it could be reasonable too as well. How you said the quality, how like. But then again, it's like how do you look? Like what is good quality bud to you then? That's the question then.
So for me,
Yeah.
because I'm used to, so look,
Uh-huh.
I'm used to smoking fresh bud. Almost
Okay.
everything that I smoke, like it's straight from my harvest.
Hmm.
Uh, it's come out of cure from the canatro. And as I smoke, I usually pick out of the canatro and pack my bowl, so it's really fresh, as opposed to say something that comes from a dispensary, right?
Gotcha.
So like
Yeah.
I get something from the dispenser. Well, not anymore, but when I used to, um, they tend to be
Uh-huh.
they tend to be more dry, right? And the
Oh,
flavor seems
yes.
to be a lot more flat, right? And a lot of that has to do with just the process, right? The process from production to testing to shipping and then to sitting on the shelf until somebody actually buys it, right?
Mm.
And this is why I encourage everybody to at least try to grow, one plant. And if you can grow it well and you can make a direct comparison yourself from what you're getting from the dispensary or from your plug versus what you're getting, that you've
Mm.
cultivated, bro, it's a whole different like tier of quality, freshness. My lungs and my throat feel so much better like after I smoke. Before, when I used to buy all my stuff from the dispensary, I'd
Hmm.
almost have to take like a day break in between smoking because my throat would be all dried out, all um
Like it's like harsh. Like it was like it'll be
yeah.
harsh. Yeah, I get you. Yeah, yeah. Wow. Yeah,
Um
okay.
and
But
now like now smoking what I smoke regularly, like man, it's day and night in terms of like the smoothness because I control all those factors, right? You got to
yeah.
understand that when somebody, a mass producer, they package all their stuff, they put it in their bins, and then all of the environmental controls they change, right? As they're getting shipped to wherever, all of those temperature, humidity, all of that's changing, and that's going to affect your bud quality in the end. And if that's something that you can control as a home grower, um, your bud quality, man, that's day and night in terms of comparison.
But like as a now like I guess as a point of view as a consumer though, like when you're smoking it and like I guess when you take out a bud from the batch, of the container, like you feel it, you smell it, and then when you're smoking it, like what is like your point to check mark to see that is good weed?
So number one, I want to say number one, and I think any connoisseur will tell you, is the smell. Like when you
Hmm.
open up that bag, because right there you're getting a whiff of like all those terpenes, right? And that's gonna tell you how well developed those terpenes are, right, in that batch. So the smell is kind of the first giveaway, right? Second, in terms of like the texture,
Hmm.
so I aim to keep anywhere between 10 to about 12% moisture in my buds. And in my experience, that's been ideal. Um, you don't want your bud too wet because if it's too wet, it it's harder to light.
Hmm.
It's a very inconsistent burn, and the burn tends to be more harsh, right?
Hmm.
And you don't want it too dry, so you don't want to put it in your hands and squish it, and then it crumbles. For the same reason, that means that then most of the terpenes have burned off. It's dried out. There's low moisture in it. Ideally, when I grab a bud, I like to be able to pinch it, and then you watch it kind of like reform itself, right? So you should be able to like squish that bud
Like
slightly.
like something like fluffiness you talking about?
Yeah, you should be
Okay,
able to
yeah.
squish it, and then you'll hear like that crunch, right? You'll hear all the little pieces of the branch crunch,
Mhm.
and then it'll reform, right? It'll come back out. So you don't typically want it to be too hard or too dense, because then that also comes in like the grind, depending on whether you're breaking it apart with your hand or with a grinder.
Yeah.
If you don't have a grinder, you could get one from us. We got these nice ceramic grinders, shameless plug. But what I like about these
Mhm.
is that the way this grinds it, um, it it helps with my burn, right? Especially if I'm rolling a joint or a blunt, I get a
Yeah.
nice even burn on it. So the moisture level and how you grind it is going to affect that ultimately, right? So that's part of the experience. So those are the main things that I'm looking for physically in the buds. A lot of people they like to um, judge the bud based on bag appeal, right? Like how nicely trimmed it is.
Uh-huh.
And to be honest, that's kind of irrelevant. I mean, as long as you don't have too much leaf on there, that doesn't. But the truth of it is, like for me, when I grow, even my sugar leaves are full of trichome.
Yeah.
So even if you get that and you grind it up, bro, you're still getting the good stuff even on the leaf, right?
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure of that. I'm
But
not too much of the picky like that, but yeah.
yeah, but people tend to judge, right? Like a bud
hmm
based on that aesthetic, and I think that aesthetically, that part doesn't really matter too much.
How about when you smoke it? How about do you look for the color of the ash?
So at least based on what we know on the science,
hmm
the the color of the ash has more to do with the amount of moisture in the bud than say the quality of the bud overall, if that makes any sense, right? So again, this is why you try to hit that sweet spot. You don't want to go really over like 15% moisture on any case.
Okay.
But that right there, that's what's going to indicate to you um,
So then like when you're
the
smoking when you're sorry, but when you're smoking something and you have that white ash, so does that mean that the bud has a good amount of moist in there? Or
so ideally, right? So the difference between saying something that's more gray or more black
uh-huh.
on the back end, so you'll know either there was too much moisture or it was too dry at the end. So the more black ash you're gonna get as it's more wet, right? So it'll come out more black on the back end, and then more gray it was drier, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that nice white ash that's going to tell you it's at least in the sweet spot. And
Gotcha.
ideally, what that should indicate to you is that if that plant was cured properly, right,
Mhm.
then typically all of those like flavor profiles, you'll be able to feel that in there. So it is a good indicator in that telling you that it was cured like within that sweet spot to retain the right amount of moisture.
Okay, okay,
And
gotcha.
typically, if it's cured properly, you're going to
Mhm.
have, again, a better taste experience with that bud. But then ultimately, right, for me, the real thing is like, what is the effect, right? So, like, throughout the day, I don't smoke the same weed all day, right? Like, in the
Mhm.
morning, there's a certain weed that I smoke for the morning.
Uh-huh.
Like, right around the afternoon, I switch, I change to a different hybrid. And then at night, like, I'll switch again to something a little bit heavier to help me fall asleep. So
Okay.
that's one thing that I recommend. Like anybody that understands weed and its effects on their body, like
Mhm.
you probably aren't smoking the same weed the whole day. Um, and that's important to note because even sometimes, like if I accidentally mix my grinders and I put like my morning weed like at 9 o'clock at night,
Mhm.
I'm not going to bed until like midnight or later, you know. But if if I'm smoking I'm at knocked out by like 10:30, almost like clockwork. If I start smoking, around 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Um,
But I feel like at that point it's like you're kind of already used to that routine, aren't you? But at
mhm.
that point, so for it to like kind of just mess up your scheduling, how you just mentioned. But I feel like at one point it's like you can I think one could tell by like if you're just smoking indica during the day and you just feel like you're getting sleepy or whatever, then that kind of just indicates that you're smoking, I guess, something not at the right time. But if you have really nothing to do and you're down for like a session where you just, slump in the couch, I mean, I guess why not, right?
Yeah, yeah, and so that's why I tell people, like once you find a strain that works for you, like
hmm
stick with that so that you can learn to navigate, your body better. And then some strains, and the other benefit of switching those strains throughout the day is that your body doesn't get completely used to like the same cannabinoids and terpenes in that one strain. Because what you'll notice is you'll end up having to smoke more and more every time to get that same pain relief or that same relaxation. And so that's what I learned. Again, that's come through experience. is learning, hey, okay, I shouldn't be smoking the same thing all day, because where once upon a time I might have been cool with just smoking, a joint, damn,
Mm-hmm.
now I got to smoke like two or three to get that same effect. And so rather than take like a tea break, which is what some people do, I rather just kind of keep my body guessing with the interactions that it has with the cannabinoids throughout the day.
Oh, that's interesting. So so when has been the last time you took a tea break?
I years, bro. I want to say
Damn.
it's been years since I've taken a tea break. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's
Yeah,
up.
and a lot of it, I mean, a lot of it has to do with that I grow, like I keep my staples, right? Like when I grow, I
Mhm.
keep for sure my nighttime bud. I will always have that in my tank growing, because that for me is one of my biggest um, helpers in terms of being able to fall asleep. So like one of the main meds that I used to get was trazodone to help me sleep, because I had a lot of trouble sleeping. But it's a very heavy pill, but I found this strain that, man, it is like clockwork. And I'm telling you, I know exactly when to start smoking it, and I know I'll be knocked out and get a solid, 6 to 8 hours of sleep.
Damn,
Um,
what strain is that called? If you don't mind me.
that's my Rager. Yeah,
You're
that's
right.
that's
Oh, okay. I remember. Yeah, you had that at the 420 event. Where we
yeah,
went.
yeah.
Yeah.
That one
Oh,
I always have in rotation, because that one for me, it's yeah, and for my wife too. Like she uses it at a
uh-huh.
lower dosage for like for her anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a great strain for us. So that one I always have growing. But I experiment with a lot of different breeders. I run different lines. And so by doing that, like I'm always smoking something different because of that, just so I know.
Got
um,
you. So
but I
then,
but I try to grow stuff that is, in a range that addresses like the main, I guess, uses for a lot of people. And that's going to be, for as a sleep aid, for anxiety, and for pain relief. So I try to focus a lot of what I'm growing when I'm looking for certain strains that they support, aiding in those functions or in those ailments.
gotcha. So then, before you started your company and all, so what were you doing before then? I think you mentioned
Um,
before that I think over there when we first started, you used to be in was it in the military, correct? Or some or
yeah, yeah.
okay,
So once upon a time, yeah, I was in the Air Force for 8 years.
gotcha. For
So I was in the Air Force, yeah, from 2000 February 2001 to February 2008,
okay,
or 2009. I'm sorry, and and so that time frame in my life, for me, I was not a cannabis user. So
you were
my
against
first,
it.
yeah, 100%, 100%. I grew up. Look, I grew up in
Uh-huh.
the '80s, so I was a dare kid. Say no to drugs. If my friends smoked weed, or if I found out they smoked weed, we would stop talking.
Oh
I
wow,
was,
okay.
so I was that guy, bro. And then I was in the military, and I saw people get busted for drugs, for weed, and I'm like, oh hell no, I'm not gonna be that kind of a dirt bag or whatever. Um, but so when by the time I got out of the military, I went to the VA hospital. I got like a medical evaluation, and they gave me a whole list of drugs that I had to take, or medicines that I had to take for pain, PTSD, for sleep, for like all of these things. And it wasn't until about a year later or 2 years later that I came across um, a doctor that was doing like evaluations for the cannabis part. And I sat down with him, and he was like, man, you're a prime candidate. Like, X, Y, and Z that you have, those are like right in line with what cannabis can be used for. And by then, the conversation on cannabis was softer. It wasn't like this hardline drug. People were talking about legalization and that.
Hmm.
And so I gave it a try. And for me, at first it was scary because it was different, right? Like, so I understand the mentality of having to get over, so many years of people telling you, oh, it's a gateway drug, your life's going to be destroyed, blah, blah, blah. So the first part is mentally getting over that.
Was
But
that hard for you? Was that hard?
to be honest, at that point in my life, no, and I'm gonna tell you why. Um, so prior to cannabis, my preferred drug of choice, right, was alcohol. And being in the military and having gone to war and like all of those things, military is an alcohol culture. Like everywhere, every time you hang out with, the people from the shop, or anytime, there's a function, you're drinking, you're getting
Mm-hmm.
smashed, whatever. So I thought, hey, as long as I'm doing this, I'm good. Nobody, no problems. But eventually, it became too much. I started to have problems at work. I started to have legal problems. I started to have relationship problems. And all because alcohol, in my opinion, truly is the gateway drug. Alcohol is the gateway drug. It is the gateway drug to taking more unnecessary risks,
Mm-hmm.
to making more bad decisions, and potentially causing more danger, to yourself and the people around you. So alcohol is the gateway drug, if you ask me. But at the time, people would say things like, well, you've been through a lot, like, yeah, you should, yeah, go ahead, take another shot, keep drinking. Hey, I'll buy you another round, all of this stuff. But that is literally the thing that poisoned my life on so many levels. First, physically, right? Having, liver problems, having other health problems.
Mm.
And then, like I said, all the other social problems and relationship problems that came along with it. But fast forward to cannabis, and I realized, you know what? I've already done so much damage to myself physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, legally. I'm like, all right, we can't be that much worse, right? So I started to lean on it a little bit more. And as I understood what that buzz was and how my body felt afterwards,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, man, I like this better. Like I still get the buzz, I get to relax, I get the pain relief. Um, but I'm not like hungover the next morning. My joints aren't sore the next morning. My all of this, like I feel better. I
Yeah.
can I can get my day started better.
You got no hangovers.
Yeah, and to
Uh-huh.
me that was a big appeal. To me, that was like that's what really to me wanted encouraged me to kind of learn more about
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
and
yeah, for
dive
sure.
deeper into that. So for me, that was really the thing that pushed me into cannabis because prior to prior to the pandemic, actually, um, I really had plans to like move down to Mexico. Like I didn't really plan to stay here.
Mm-hmm.
And cannabis just kind of opened a lot of doors for me, um, that made me reconsider that move. And for my wife too, like she had, some job opportunities that presented themselves here. And so we were like, you know what, we'll stick around. And in a way, I'm glad we did because I've been able to learn so much and engage with a lot of people, share my knowledge. And so
Mm.
that's been fun. The hardest thing for me on the business side of things is learning to navigate the cost of running the business and being able to give like a real benefit to the people. Like I don't. It's kind of weird for me to try to look at the business um, from like a strictly money standpoint. And
Mm-hmm.
I think for me that's why in terms of growth it's been difficult for me because
I,
I would love to be able to do what I do and share the
mm-hmm.
information that I'm able to collect um, freely, like without having any cost. But unfortunately, that's just not the way the world works. Like if I want to keep studying or growing, like I need to pay, etc. If I want, and
Yeah.
so that's the hard part.
I think
Um,
that is a hard part, man. Like I guess making it into that making it transition to that full time, like I'm
yeah.
not unless this is full time for you right now.
Yeah, so it has become a full-time thing for me. I
Oh,
mean, I'm fortunate in that, prior to this,
uh-huh.
I had made some investments, and so like I'm good in terms of like my financial health. Um, this right here, this endeavor for me, Mojo's and Aim Higher, is more about trying to help people understand one that there is a way to break free from, say, like um, the dependency, right? The dependency of a dispensary, dependency of having to get your weed from a plug where you don't know what's going into, right? So to
Mm-hmm.
one degree, it's that. It's helping people, one, realize that, hey, if you really want to, you can have more control in this. Two, even if you don't, here's a way for you to understand this experience, right? Or this journey in a way that you can utilize to improve your life, whether you're talking about just your physical health or your mental health or your emotional health.
Mm-hmm.
And then three is to kind of encourage people to build on that, right? Because I feel like as a society, we're too dependent on external things, right? You're too dependent on other people to help define your purpose, to help define what your goals should be, or how to navigate, your health, right? Your
Mm-hmm.
overall health. And I feel like those stressors, they pull people in so many different directions. And so like I feel like what cannabis has done for me, it's helped me to break free of those like mental and emotional blocks so that I can develop like in my own for myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's been a lot more liberating in my experience. So for me, if I can encourage people, through cannabis or through, something that we have in common, that I know for a fact can improve your lifestyle in more ways than one, then I want to connect with those people. I want to be a resource for those people. And so that's a lot of what we're trying to do, through this journey, through this like cannabis journey.
Gotcha, my guy. So,
That,
Loki, before we go any more deep, you want to try to take a little smoke break? You want to do a little
yeah,
lefty? You want
hell
to take a
yeah,
dab? I'm gonna
bro.
take a dab right now.
Yes, sir.
So I need to just light this torch real quick. Sadly, my puff coat don't work right now. I gotta go get me a new, little damanizer. Yeah,
The chamber.
the
Yeah.
chamber. Yeah. Cause fuck, man, I don't know why. Recently, I've gone like through 4 or 5 within a month. They just tend to
Ooh,
break, like, although I clean them and all, but they just tend to break like literally fast as hell. And I'm just wondering what's going on. I don't know. I
damn,
gotta
that's
give me,
crazy.
yeah, I don't know if I gotta give me that 3D chamber now. I don't know, man. But or just get me a new rig. I'm not too sure, man. But yeah, ever since I got to the electric rigs, I kind of stopped doing the traditional glass ones. But it doesn't hurt.
You got to do what you got to do, bro.
Yeah, my guy. Yeah. Almost there. Almost
Yeah, and
there.
I'm also a fan of like the Puffco and like because there's less stuff you got to carry around with you whenever you're trying to take a dab.
Oh yeah, and it's
It's
way
like
faster too, man. Oh, we would have taken already. I don't know how many tokes, man. You still gotta wait on me. uh, but anyways, man. So how was your time in the military though? Like I know you say you started in '01 and all. So did you like where did you guys where were you at during that time and all?
oh man, so I joined the Air Force in it was February of '01. So this is before September 11th. By the time I went to boot camp to tech school, I got to my first duty station in July of '01. So from July of '01 to September of '01,
Mm-hmm.
that was like the only time of like my active military career that was peacetime. So after September 11th, the whole rest of my time in service was either OEF, so Operation Enduring Freedom, or OIF, Operation Iraqi Freedom. So during Enduring Freedom, I played mostly a support role.
Mm-hmm.
We deployed like the First Infantry Division, the 101st Airborne. We sent them into Afghanistan, like on that first, what was the Operation Shock and Awe. Um, and then the reason I didn't deploy to OEF was because I was literally so brand new to the Air Force that I had none of my training signed off. So I wasn't even qualified to go to war. That's how
Oh
underqualified I
wow.
was.
Damn, so you were just you were just strictly straight off the draft then, huh?
Bro, I was like 18 years old, brand new, just came out of tech school. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know I didn't have any like real life experience doing my job. Um,
So you were scared, huh? You're kind of nervous and shit, or not really?
Yes and no. I want to say, at least in the beginning, right? In the beginning, I feel like because of all the information that we were being fed, I
Uh-huh.
was more gung ho. I was like, man, send me, send me. When I didn't deploy, I was upset. Because I had gotten a tasking like probably a month after September 11th, I got a tasking. But they took away that tasking once my chief realized I was so underqualified.
It's
And I
ready.
was mad.
You want? Cheers, my
Cheers,
guy.
bro.
I've been dying to hit a bong, low key though. But what is a tasking though, low key?
Um, so like basically orders to deploy. So back then I was with the transportation unit. I was a general purpose mechanic. Um, but because I literally hadn't had any training on any of the vehicles we had, so no Humvees, 5 tons, Deuce and a half, none of that. I hadn't trained on any of it, so they couldn't deploy me. Um,
Gotcha.
so I spent that first like year and a half training and then deploying troops and cargo. But then
Okay.
when Operation Iraqi Freedom started, by then I was already signed off on all my training. So when that tasking came down, um, it was a unique tasking. So that tasking was for us as a transportation unit to provide convoy security for the army. And
Gotcha.
so in 2004, that's what I did. I got weapons training on M249 machine gun,
Hmm.
50 cal, and Mark 19 grenade launcher. And we basically were driving up and down Iraq, moving supplies and troops.
So,
Um,
so, so I guess where you guys were located, like you guys, the troops, like, was it just calm around like the surrounding, or we guys like kind of been kind of just
oh
like watching
hell,
you guys backs and stuff like that?
hell no, bro. We were getting bombed every day, bro. Like
Damn.
the first like 3 months, I want to say were the worst. 2.5 months were the worst. Um, because when we got there, god damn, we were getting bombed at least once a day, and in some cases like 3 to 4 times a day.
Damn. And
And
I'm
so
sure shit was just it was just hit random, huh? Like you guys been just we were just doing your normal day and fuck.
yeah, bro. And this is why. So for me, um, so we had a rotation, like how we would go out on the missions, like on the convoys.
Hmm.
Um, and for me personally, I don't know, maybe I was weird or something, but whenever we would be on base and the bombs were falling, I hated that feeling. Because like I would get mad, and it's not like I could shoot at somebody. It's not like I could take out my anger on somebody because I'm like, "Fuck, bro, we're getting bombed again."
Hmm.
Um, and I hated not being able to do anything. This is you basically just sit there. Hopefully, you're close to a bunker or you find some cover. Yeah, so like I hated just sitting there
Okay.
on base waiting for a bomb to fall on me. So I would volunteer more frequently to be out on the road missions because at
Uh-huh.
least on those road missions, like I had a way to like defend myself or fight back or I
Like
wasn't just like a
stops.
sitting duck.
Okay. Gotcha.
Um, so yeah, in a weird way, that's how I spent, trying to be on the road as much as possible when I was out there. Um, but that experience for me at the time,
Hmm.
um, I was at the time I was conflicted, right? At the time because um, September 11th was still relatively fresh, but we had more information out there, more intel about like the when, the why, the where. Um, and so I was a little bit conflicted out there.
Uh-huh.
But now, like looking back on it, I'm probably even more conflicted
So
about like my role in all of that, right?
so
Because
so I'm not sure if you want to go a little deep into to this, but like, well, what now from like before, I think this is what you're kind of talking about, but like before till now, what do you think overall about what happened in no well, in 9/11?
Well, and I guess that's what that's where I was
Yeah.
headed,
Oh, okay.
right? Like, so,
Okay.
so now
Yeah.
that I understand like the full story and I understand history better and I understand like, um, it's upsetting to me, it's upsetting. Especially because, I want to say last year, yeah, about a year ago, for some reason I came across a document regarding my unit, the 2632nd truck company. And in that report, it was a declassified document about my unit. And one
Hmm.
of the captains from the detachment we were part of, he wrote that basically they expected us to fail. They expected my unit to
Hmm.
fail completely because they knew that we were undertrained and ill equipped. So much so, look, when we landed, we didn't even get the correct body armor when we left. We had like the old ceramic plates from like the Vietnam era,
What?
and the trucks that we deployed with,
Uh-huh.
none of them were armored. They were just like regular trucks, no body armor, no nothing. So when we would go on missions, I didn't even wear my body plates on my vest. I had to put one on the door like
Hmm.
as protection, and then one on the floor as like blast protection in case we went on an IED. We didn't. It wasn't until like almost a month after we were there, they started to send us sheets of metal that we had to weld onto the
To the
trucks that we would get.
trucks.
Yeah,
Wow, they
and
didn't
then
even like sorry.
yeah, and then that
Go.
ended up causing other problems because the suspension on the trucks weren't strong enough to support all the extra weight from all the steel plates that we welded onto them. So then our trucks were breaking down on the fucking road just because they couldn't support. It was a mess, right? So it all of that was a mess,
Uh-huh.
and I know that I'm alive not because necessarily my skill, not because necessarily my level of preparedness. I'm alive strictly 100% because of luck. I was just lucky to not be where that bomb fell at that moment, or where that bullet flew at that moment, or on that mission when the shit went down, right?
Mhm.
Um,
A
but the
ship
fact
went
that
down during your active.
yes, but not fortunately for me, not on any mission that I was on.
Oh,
So like
okay, okay, okay.
on my unit, yes, but not on any mission that I was on.
Gotcha.
Um, and but the report that captain had written
Yeah.
basically confirmed what I thought at the time, is that we were not prepared properly, we weren't trained properly, we weren't equipped properly.
Hmm.
But they knew all of this. And despite that, they set us up for failure. So much so that when my unit deployed, they issued us our full issue of body bags because they expected all of us to come back basically dead. Now,
Damn.
typically, what happens with your body bag issue is like when a unit deploys, based
Uh-huh.
on like the history of casualty rates in that unit, they'll give you like that percentage of like body bags because they expect, this is war, some people are going to die in this. For my unit, we got 100% of our issue for body bags because that's how ill prepared we were and that's how ill equipped we were. They expected us. And fortunately, my entire unit, we all came back alive. We
Wow,
had,
that's good.
some
That's
injuries
less.
and stuff along the
Uh-huh.
way, but all of us came back alive, bro.
Wow, that's
But when I
that.
read that report a year ago, bro, that made me extra pissed about all that, bro.
Uh,
Um, so it's hard for me because on one end, the my time in the service
mm,
is probably by far one of the best decisions that I ever made in my life because it's still paying back to me, um, dividends from that time. However, it's also a time in my life that I'm most conflicted about because I understand now my role in history. I understand my role. Like when we look at the global picture today, right, and we see what's happening, like in Gaza or
yeah, yeah.
Ukraine, and we see stuff like that. And now I can see from firsthand experience what our role is in a lot of these messes that are created in the world. Um, and so
And
with that, it's conflicting for me, because I
yeah.
understand, damn, I was part of that same sphere, and I did that at that time with gusto, I did that with, I was, people would say, hey, you're a hero, and I believed it, you know. So,
But then
so
like
yeah,
what is then your role like per se then? Or like how do you understand like what was your role overall?
I mean, I was a part of the machine, right? I was a
Uh-huh.
part of
But
that.
like I think like what I'm trying to say is like in a bigger picture though, like how you're saying, and like in a bigger picture, like how these people are right now at war with in these other countries, like what do you think the soldiers here are their role in, or like for your in case though, like
Well, so here's the hard part about that question, right? Because when you're in it,
hmm
like if you're in the fight, if you're on the front line, if you're at war, if you do not wholeheartedly and truly believe in your cause, that's a recipe for disaster for you, because that's going to cause you to hesitate. It's going to cause you to, create a situation for yourself or for your unit that's dangerous, right?
hmm
So you can't second guess. So at that time, yeah, I drank the Kool-Aid and I believe, hey, everything we're doing, we're right. We're the good guys, we're all of that. And you have to, if you wear that uniform, if you're a part of that machine, you have to believe it. You have to, otherwise you can't do your job well and you put yourself and others at risk. So it's difficult, right? It's difficult
hmm
to give an honest analysis when you're in it. When you've had time to step away from it and to do an honest assessment, that's usually where that kind of comes in. But and that's the hard part. I feel like, because having been in the military and having understood like the whole point of boot camp and taking away your individualism and making you a part of the machine for the overall mission, like
hmm
that's important in that function, in that role. That's important. But the people steering that ship, the politicians and the people they don't always have the best interest. I mean, the truth of the matter is what we're seeing now unfold in front of our eyes is they don't always have the best interest of the people at heart. They don't always have like the
no.
humanitarian intention on the front end. What we are able to see now is that for a lot of us, we're being manipulated, right? We're being manipulated for some sort of financial or political or a strategic gain.
Yeah, and I think that is more getting more common. Like people are starting to realize that more than because I feel like how you're saying, I think we've been getting manipulated for more than what we been thinking, I feel like we've been from I think since the start, of when you got politicians and people up with higher power, stuff like that, start to run things. I think that's what like where everything just started to change a lot. And I think to this day, like we don't know a lot of what's really going on, then a little bit of what's really going on, but then again, it's more like bullshit that we really don't need when it gets to do like celebrities and stuff like that, where that's all your attention gets to right now when again we don't know what's really going on at the other side of the world, or even in the ocean or on the moon. Loki gonna take another dab, bro. But that's crazy, man. That's
Bro, because
crazy.
you're getting into the meat and potatoes of what I mean, like when I want people to be a little bit more self-sufficient,
hmm
right? And it's to this regard too. Um, because every structure that is dependent on some sort of like dogma. And by this I mean take like a government institution, religious institution, even family as an institution, socially speaking,
Yeah, yeah.
or academia as an institution, right? All of these, they have an agenda, right? They want you to do things according to their philosophies, their beliefs, and that. And unfortunately, we spend our whole lives trying to measure ourselves against someone else's standard, against
hmm
someone else's expectation, against someone else's philosophy. And
Yeah.
that makes it hard for us to figure out who we really are, because we're not asking, ourselves, for we're not asking ourselves what we really want or what we truly want to achieve. We're asking ourselves, what does the government want us to achieve, or what does the government want us to be, or what do they say we should do? What does the
Yeah.
church want us to be? What do they say, or how do they say our responsibilities in this and that are?
When
Versus really asking ourselves. And this is where that disconnect is because if we're not thinking for ourselves, for our own benefit, we're always going to be at the mercy of someone else's expectation. We're always going to be at the mercy of what someone else says is our obligation. And that, whenever you come to that realization, depending on how old you are and how much of your life, or how much of your life you've invested into this idea,
mm-hmm.
it's hard. It's hard to break away. Like, one of the hardest things for me is to unlearn all that indoctrination, all those things that I was told my whole life that I'm supposed to be and supposed to do. And now that have been working towards my own development or my own evolution, I feel like I'm more free. I feel like I have more power. I feel like I truly have more independence. Because I'm not at the mercy, of my mom or my dad's ideas or expectations. I'm not at the mercy of the church's burden of obligation or expectations on me or my life. And even when it comes to the government, like, and my thing is this, as long as you're willing to be accountable for whatever you do,
Mm-hmm.
like, do it. Do it. If you truly believe that's the beauty, that's one of the things that I've enjoyed about nature, is I can see nature evolve as it's meant to be and appreciate it
Mm-hmm.
for being its true self versus something that has been manipulated for someone else's gain. And I feel like a lot of us, to some different levels, have been or are being manipulated just for someone else's gain versus our own fulfillment.
Oh, hell yeah, totally, man. I feel like how you just said, I think there's no other perfect way to say it, but like we try to, follow how you said the way that we've been guided through, and I think even for one, even as kids, we try to be the best, to make proud of our parents, to make them feel great about themselves. Because I think we all want to make others feel great, but not ourselves great. And that's something where we, I start talking mostly in general, everybody, but I feel like as well, like we don't tend to take time for ourselves to heal or to really, have that self-love,
To
especially with
grow.
yeah, yeah. I feel like that, especially with men,
Mm-hmm.
that's another big thing. But then again, it's like we were grown, especially within our community and culture, it's like we're meant to tough that up, not to express it, to hold it in. We seen our parents, tios, uncle, grandparents, just either, smoke a cigarette or drink a beer, couple beers, or that's pretty much it, man. Or at the end of the day, they just get to explode, and you get to see how they really express their anger, and that's where we don't really want to get at that point.
Yeah, and it has to be a conscious effort. Like, it's not something that happens necessarily by accident. Like,
Hmm.
I feel like as long as you have a growth mindset, right? Like, because you should be able to look back at your life and be like, man, I'm doing better now, or I've grown so much, right? Or but things should be headed in that a growth direction. Now, that's not to say some people are okay with being stagnant their whole life. And
Hmm.
if that's your cup of tea, good for you. Um, but if you have a growth mindset, you should always be able to look back and see how far you've come. And you can't do that if you're still trying to meet expectations that were put on you when you were a child, or that expectations that were put on you when you were a teenager or whatever, right? Like, you should
Hmm.
be evolving. Those expectations that line should be moving forward, upward. And what I've learned is this in nature, right? Like, the more true that you are to yourself,
Hmm.
right? And truly to yourself, the better you're going to be for everything else that's around you. So people might look at it as, no, you're being selfish. You're taking all this time for yourself and blah, blah, blah. No, but look, if you manage your physical health better, there's those less days that you're going to be out of the picture for your kids or for your spouse or for, whoever might need you. right? Because if you're
Yeah.
not taking care of your physical health and then you're out, on bed rest, for a week or whatever, you're useless to everybody else. So take care of your physical health. The same goes for your mental health. If you're having like a mental breakdown or anxieties or stresses and you can't operate or make the best decisions, that affects everybody around you and everything around you. So take care of your mental health. That should be a priority above everything else. And again, people will look at it and be like, no, that's selfish. Your kids should come first. Your wife should come first. Your church should come first. Your country should come first. No, bro, slow down. Because the more true I am to me,
Mm-hmm.
the better everything that feeds from me, the better anything or anyone that needs something from me will be served much better. And that's a hard, like mental lock that we have because the whole world tells you, no, sacrifice your time for your family, sacrifice your time for your government, sacrifice your life for your people, and sacrifice. And that sounds nice. It sounds very nice. But in practice, if all you're doing is giving, 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 giving,
Mm-hmm.
what about you? What about your growth? What about your development? And I've seen time and again people that spend their whole life sacrificing, and you
Yeah.
see the deterioration of like their spirit, of their engagement, their positivity, their all of that. um so I that's my philosophy, and that's what I want people to kind of embrace a little bit more, is like really truly focus on you, because the more you do that, the clearer your your path will see to you.
No, yeah, yeah, totally. And then there's always gonna be like ups and downs, the good days, bad days throughout, but like I feel like we always gotta see the light or the better side to it, as hard as everything might seem at first or at the moment,
Yeah.
you know.
And well, and bro, look, let me tie it back into the weed, right? Let's bring this full
Oh
circle.
yeah.
So when I train my plants, what I mean by training my plants, I put my plants through some level of stress, right?
Okay.
Either by bending them or by
Mm-hmm.
taking certain cuts, by stretching them, stuff, different things. Now, if I do too much of that, I can kill my plant, or I can cause my plant to hermaphrodite, or any number of things. I'll have a smaller yield, my buds won't get as big. I can do a lot of damage if I overstress my plants,
Mm-hmm.
right? The same thing is true for us. Now, a certain amount of stress in our life is good. A certain amount of conflict in our life is good, because what that does for me, that conflict or that stress, it causes me to have like mental exercise or emotional exercise, right? I get to test my patience, or I get to test my philosophies if I'm having a debate with someone that I don't see eye to eye, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
testing, the veracity of my claims, right? So to some degree, that stress, to some degree, that pain, those growing pains, right, are necessary, but they should be manageable. And the problem is when you're trying to meet, you know, 30,000 people's expectations, it becomes too much to handle.
Yeah.
But if you're handling your own life, your own that's a lot easier to handle. And the amount of growth that you'll experience if you take your focus from everybody else and put it towards you, your growth will be exponential. And I mean that in the physically, mentally, emotionally, and the people, the real ones around you, they're gonna see that and they're gonna be inspired by that. And I think that truly, if you're living your life that way,
Mm-hmm.
you'll have a much bigger impact in your immediate solar system than you would just trying to make people feel comfortable or feel nice, or all of that.
And try to meet their expectations instead of
Yeah,
yours trying to meet yours, which I think that's where everyone gets in a mix of, man, because I think everyone out here is trying to be liked, trying to be, cool with everybody, but in reality ain't nobody really trying to be cool with you. I mean, somebody can handshake you, but in reality they're like, fuck this guy. I don't
yeah,
fuck with
and
this
bro,
guy. It is sad, man, but
and that
it's
that's why you get a lot of phoniness out there, and I feel that, like when I engage with people, I could feel, hey, are you being your, and it's because I'm more in tune with my own vibe, right? Like I'm more in tune with my own peace.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can see other people's like vibrations when they're negative a little bit. You know, I can
Yeah.
almost feel it.
Or just like how you said, like you feel them, or if you just walk up to somebody, you can just feel it right away. Like I don't know, I think that's something that I do too. I feel like people's vibes, and like I can straight up feel it when somebody's like off or negative. But at the
Yeah.
same time, it's like depending, I guess, on who yourself is. I'm a guy that would like still try to get to know you and all and try to be cool. But if at the end of the day, if there's something that I guess doesn't click, it doesn't click, and it could be bygones be bygones or like respect but at the end it's like respect at the end. I can But some people can take it to just like a diss or even just straight hate.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like you said, bro, like I should be able, if my vibe is balanced enough, it doesn't matter if I'm in a pit of snakes or not, you know, like I know what my vibe is.
Hmm.
And I've been in situations like that. Like real talk, bro. I've been in situations where there's red flags everywhere, danger everywhere,
Hmm.
but my vibe knows enough to stay away from where that is, you know? Um but I feel like the more you know yourself, the more true you are to yourself, the more you can see that outwardly. Because the more disturbance or the more imbalance I feel like you have in your life, you're too busy with that to notice everybody else, like all that negative energy and vibes. And so you tend, if you're not careful, that's how you end up getting, stabbed in the back, or that's how bullshit happens.
Yeah, well,
So
totally, bro, and I totally understand that. I'm actually going through some bullshit myself right now. But yeah, man, that is crazy, man. How some people are, um, but at the end is like it's that's as well kind of what you're saying too. Is like once you know yourself and you're just vibing with your own self, you'll probably more attract more people than what you really think, instead of you going out there and pretty much putting yourself where a bunch of how you say red flags could see and probably take advantage or take the yeah just take advantage of whatever opportunity they might get off you or something like that, or just como el mal de ojo, like how we
yeah, yeah.
Latinos say.
Yeah, yeah, and I wouldn't even say necessarily that you would attract more people,
Mhm.
but what I would say is that you would attract more authentic people, like the people that are attracted to that energy. That if you're vibing, on a good balance,
Mhm.
those people will be more authentic, and those interactions will be more authentic. And I feel like I would rather have a handful of authentic interactions instead of 1,000 phony, likes or whatever the hell,
See,
um,
and it's funny how we were saying that because I've talked to people a lot with when I go to these events and all, and just like how we're talking about people, that's how it is. I feel like within the community here, the cannabis industry here in Illinois. I'm probably sure it is in other states, but again, I don't, we're here in Illinois, so, but again, but how about you? What's your point of view within the industry here, like market wise and underground market wise?
um so I mean, obviously, when you talk about like the big MSOs and stuff like that,
Yeah.
I feel like the problem with that is that it's a money first mentality, right? So whenever I do business with somebody or whenever I collaborate with somebody, um, if the first focus out of their mouths is money, 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 how much, and this and that, that's typically not the type of business or collaboration that I want to be a part of. Because again, I understand that a business, you got to make money. I get that.
Mhm.
But if that's your first focus, if that's your primary focus, then chances are that when it comes to like your customers or whoever you're trying to reach out, you don't really care about the value that they're getting out of it, right? And for me, because I am a consumer and because I'm approaching my business from a consumer standpoint,
Mhm.
I want to make sure that that interaction that I have with the consumers brings more value to them, that they walk out of that experience feeling like, hey, I really truly got value for this. Not, oh, okay, cool. I'm just gonna go keep spending my money at this place or this thing, whatever. And the truth of the matter is, I hope that at some point I have enough interactions with my customers that they won't even need me anymore because they've learned so well that they're doing it on their own and they're evolving on their own, you know? Like I
Hmm.
would rather that my customers come get what you need from me, evolve, and boom, you're doing it on your own. Because the less you need me, the less I gotta come out here and put on a show and stuff. But the more you learn, the more
and
you learn, the more I can feel confident in saying, hey, I contributed to their growth. I inspired them to grow in some way. Um,
yeah, and the more
so
time for you to smoke.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Uh,
But that's my hope, and so
yeah.
that's how I feel out like my collaborations or
Hmm.
businesses. And again, unfortunately, just from the business side of it, the MSOs, I feel like they're doing it all wrong. Even all of this infighting within them.
Oh yeah,
When
but
it
I
comes
mean, like
when it comes to like legislation, bro, like this bullshit that GTI just pulled, bro.
yeah, the
Um,
one that just happened. And as
so it's like,
well, well, we can't even grow unless you're a medical patient too. So it's like, come on, like how can we started growing at least up to like 5 plants in your household for everybody, and then you just take away just like the recreational people, where again, like going to these dispensaries, you're paying out of pocket like overpriced shit where in reality you're out here smoking like mids, man. Like you're not really smoking quality product,
yeah.
for major of these cases, man. And like I go to Michigan to re-up a lot. Like that's pretty much where I go to. Again, I feel like that's where seen good quality, but for a reasonable price. But then again, like just like how I'm talking with you, and just I have other friends of mine that are, do grow a little bit. It's where, start growing, it saves you money, but again, it you just learn more of the plant itself, other than just consuming it. And
Well, and I would say more than that, right? Because so this
mhm.
year, this is the first year that I'm actually starting a vegetable garden.
Okay.
Right. So kind of along the same lines, right? That I said I'd rather smoke my own stuff than dispensary stuff.
Yeah.
And what I'm learning now, like as I'm eating, fruits and vegetables that aren't from like Jewel or Mariano's, like
Uh-huh.
I noticed the difference, right? Like I have friends that grow and I'm like, oh man, these watermelons or tomatoes are like, that's so crazy. So I want to do that for myself. So I started growing weed. Now I'm growing food, right? To kind of help my self-sufficiency, my independence a little bit. So I'm developing, not just am I learning about weed and plants and growing and cultivating, but now I got in the backyard, I got some tomatoes, some corn, some beans, some strawberries,
Hmm.
um, testing that skill in a real world or a broader world exploration. Um,
Yeah, because it's nice to have some type of knowledge back, like you get to deal with some farming, gardening, like it's
yeah,
nice because you never
and
know, man.
an appreciation for nature too, bro. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
stuff that normally I would overlook, right? Like the interaction or the necessity of, say, certain insects, and you're like, first you think like, oh, gross, insects, or you scared, or you have a phobia of something. But when you learn how the ecosystems interact for the benefit of your plant, you're like, oh shit, come over here, ladybugs, come over here, worms, help me out, be my partners in my garden.
yeah.
And that's another thing that I feel is beautiful about that entire process is you're expanding not just your knowledge and the a practical knowledge that you can apply, but then like on a deeper level, like a understanding or an empathy, if you will, for nature, for
Hmm.
your surroundings and stuff. So there's levels to it, and that's why that's why I feel like it's such a beautiful thing. Um, that
So
that you can get starting from just growing a cannabis plant.
it's a circle of life right there, man. Literally right there.
Yeah.
No, yeah, for sure, man. But like actually getting back to like the industry point of view though, um, so another crazy thing, I'm not sure if you, because I know you mentioned it, but I'm not sure if you do know this, but is that some of these, cause well, I know for sure one dispensary makes you like check off where it tells you that the higher the percentage, the more it's gonna cost you and tax wise, which that again that's something that I really don't like when you shop in there. But just like the vibes when you go to a dispensary here in Illinois, man, like it's very corporate. Like it's I feel like it's always kind of like serious based. Like I'm not sure how about you? How's your experience? I guess you said it's been a while since you've gone to a dispensary, but like from what you remember, how was it for you?
So, so to be honest, I want to say before rec,
Hmm.
my experience at the dispensary used to be better. So when it was like only medicinal, um, my experience was better. And now, yeah, like it feels like you're just kind of like at a store. There's less attention from like the bud tenders and stuff that were like back in the day, bro. They would sit there with you. They will basically hold your hand through that entire process.
What like how different? Like, is there kind of was it similar to how it was to now, or is there it just completely switched?
I mean, it's changed mainly because they're trying to cater to like a much broader audience, right? Instead of just like a small medicinal audience, now you have medicinal and rec.
Yeah.
Um, and as a medicinal patient back then, I had, or at least more things were accessible to me first, right? Like I had priority over rec, but you
Hmm.
don't see that anymore in the dispensaries. I don't think, not in the last experience that I had, and at least from what I've heard from other people, what their experiences are is they, it's harder to get your meds regularly. They run out of your stuff more regularly. Um, and so that's unfortunate. And that again, that kind of goes to like what GTI, like that, them blocking that bill and bullshit, making it
Hmm.
harder for medicinal patients to be able to, just shop around for their meds. And that's one
Yeah.
of the things that pushed me to start growing my own stuff. Like I would go to the dispensary and then I would find a strain that worked for me that I like.
Hmm.
But then, the next time I go and re up, they're out of it. But we have, this, and that. But again, like knowing how it takes me a while to get adjusted to the different weeds, like if it's for specific use, in this case for sleep,
Hmm.
um, like experimenting with it, right? So I had to start like that experimentation process over again. So the fact that GTI would, go out of their way to like basically hold their customers hostage and shit, like
Hmm.
it's fucked up. It just makes it compounds an already existing problem.
Gotcha. Yeah, for sure. But how about like I know yourself, you go to events and but how about how's your point of view within like the underground market?
Um, so so I don't know. I feel like it's not as clear either, right? And this is why like I'm less uh I'm less likely to buy weed like at those events
Hmm.
unless I know the vendor.
Yeah.
Um, one of the things that kind of frustrates me, and maybe it's just me, is in the way that the weed is handled at a lot of these events, right? Because I mean, I go out of my way to keep my weed in a temperature controlled environment, humidity controlled environment as much as possible because I know that those factors are important.
Gotcha.
But like now, if I go to an event and then in the underground market, and then there's just bags of weed just like sitting on the table, wide open. That means no temperature control, no humidity control, no like clean air control or anything like that. So like it's in my opinion, I don't like the way that it's handled by and large, right?
Hmm.
Because like we mentioned earlier in the podcast, all of those things affect the quality of that bud at the end. So if somebody's sitting there with a pound of weed on the table in a bag that's open, and by the end of the event they haven't sold it all, they're just gonna close that bag up, go to the next event, open it up. But there's no controls in that. And if someone's handling, or in my opinion, mishandling their weed in such a way,
Hmm.
then and that's in an open public space, then how are they mishandling it? You know,
If
when
they're
nobody's
growing,
around or look.
yeah, yeah.
And part of it is because back before I got my medical card, um, I've been to like different trap houses, and
Hmm.
and like the majority of them. we're not like the cleanest, and so that's another thing that encouraged me to like have more control over my own supply. Is I'm like, oh my god, bro, I can't believe I buy stuff in this place,
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Like this is
so
my plug. Fuck.
yeah,
I gotta
yeah,
give you a new one. I gotta be
yeah,
the
bro,
plug now. Yeah,
bro.
I understand that. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from because, like, again, you're inhaling it. Like, you're like, it's like, oh my God. Yeah,
Yeah,
but and then I think that's where, like, in some cases, people also kind of get that bad experience too. I mean, I think that's where, like, where they smoke something and they didn't like the effect. Um, Again, maybe
yeah,
that could be another reason why the mistake, like the miscarriage of your plant as it's growing.
yeah, yeah, and again, that all of those things factor in different
Hmm.
ways. And so that's where I have a hard time with the black market, and then
Uh-huh.
like it's hard to get like clear answers. So for me, at least, if I'm gonna buy something from someone, I'm gonna ask a lot of questions, and depending
Hmm.
on how those questions are answered, is gonna determine whether or not I'm gonna buy something. You know.
Gotcha.
Um.
But what, as in, I guess, like, what about like within the people and all, like, because honestly, like, how do I say it? I feel like I'm a third party within this industry because, like, I just like to get along with everybody and like try to make collaborations, work together. Well, because I feel like that's why we're all here, to work together because we're a community. I feel like we should all help each other out, one way or another. Not try to be in any, like, burn any bridges, like stuff like that. No type of bad vibes. That's how my mindset was coming into this industry. Because and I was talking to somebody about like the way that I was thinking, and they were talking of like that's kind of like that high school mentality of like because you're just vibing smoking with your friends like that. That's how I started coming into this industry, and little as the more I got in it and just kind of just looking at how everybody is, it's not how it is in reality. Everyone seems to be in their own little small circle. Some people, a group of people don't really fuck with this other group of people. And it's like, why is there so much inner drama when in reality it's more of the plant itself? Like, come on. But
Well, I think a lot of that is like the residual of the bigger market, right? Because the bigger market, like we said before, it's money driven, right?
mhm,
And so that's like a residual of the same. It falls into it in even in the black market, right? Like people are just fighting over the same customer base essentially, right? Because that customer base are the customers that understand, hey, I don't want to get the bullshit from the dispensary, so you're coming to the gray or the black market. Um, but there's only so many of those customers, right? Like all
yeah.
of the other the bigger market or that new market, they're still going to the dispensary, right? Because that's where they feel safe. That's where they feel like regulation is like protecting them in terms of like all of that shit.
Mhm.
So I feel like that's where the struggle is inside of the black market, is that the customer base from the black market is shrinking, but the number of uh, producers or sellers in the black market is increasing. And so that's where I feel have you're going to have that struggle. Um, I mean, but I think that that's normal, right? Like for any new industry, right?
Mhm.
Those players, the smaller players, the ones that are good, they're gonna stick around, for a while, and the ones that are cutting corners and producing shit, like all of that will be exposed in time, and those guys will fall out. But going back to why I would encourage people to, start being more self-sufficient, because then you have a baseline for comparison in terms of what quality is,
Mhm.
and what something that's, properly maintained, properly handled and stuff should be like. Um,
What?
and if you don't know that, if you don't understand that, you're just always at the mercy of what someone else tells you is good. Like they'll tell you, hey, this is good, but it's shit. And then your whole time you're thinking, hey, this is good, and you're telling everybody this is good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I think but that at that point, I feel like what type of smoker, if you're even a connoisseur, because then if you're comparing somebody that's a connoisseur to somebody that just started smoking, and you give shit weed to somebody, again, connoisseur, to a new person say, of course it's good weed, but to somebody that looks at it, smells it, takes their time, they're gonna notice this isn't, quality to them, maybe it could
Yeah,
be quality to somebody, but it could be quality to not them, but at the end of the day, I think it's all like smoker's choice. That's how I put it as well too. Um, like, again, some people might not fuck with craft growers, but only fuck with dispensaries. Go ahead and waste your money.
yeah.
Overpriced weed, but then again, I think this is a market where, like, your pride and cockiness should be at its lowest, and be more open to the knowledge of growth, of what one could give you, because, again, there's as much ways as there is to grow weed, there's as much ways to just learn. It could be the basics, it could be a little more in depth, more complex. It could be more the scientific, the more medical side to it, or even the more like law for it, stuff like that. So I feel like this should be more of an open minded than, think one's like has, I guess, more better stuff than the other. If that's the way I can put it, think.
Yeah, and I feel like um good weed is going to vary from person to person, like you said, their
Hmm.
opinion of what good weed is, right? And and even the science will tell you, like not everybody's going to experience the same weed the same way,
Hmm.
right? So there's always going to be variance. Um, if someone is sampling something that I grew, I don't sit there and be like, "Oh, this is the best weed you've ever had." Blah blah blah. It's just
Yeah,
no. Hey, look, smoke
yeah.
it. If you like it, great. If you
Uh-huh.
don't, then just know don't get this strain or the whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
it doesn't. It's not like that's not the driver for me. I don't gotta boast myself.
Yeah.
If you hear that something that I grew is good,
Huh.
it's because somebody else told you, not because I told you, or
Gotcha.
because you experienced it yourself and that's the opinion that you've come up with.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
right, right, right. The way
because
that
all
it just
that,
market, it's the marketing that kind of
yeah,
ruins it.
yeah, and
And,
it's like I don't need to, I don't need to put somebody else's brand down, because
mhm.
if you smoke somebody else's stuff and maybe I smoked it and I'm like, hey, it didn't do anything for me, but you're like, man, this helps me relax, this takes away my anxiety, this blah blah blah. Hey, good for you. Then go get your
Mhm.
stuff from over there. Um, it shouldn't be a thing about hate or nah, that's bullshit or nah, that's
Yeah.
unless I can prove somehow, some way that what you're consuming is has high levels of metals or toxins or whatever.
Mhm.
So unless I can prove that, there's no reason why I would tell you don't go get that from so and so.
Yeah.
Um, because then we're just talking about like outright health risks, versus we're talking about quality in the experience.
No, most definitely, man. And I know I feel like it's just a few of us, again, I feel like I tell this to everybody, but it's because it's true, man. And I think, myself, and as a company that I have, I really want to represent is more of our community as a Latino culture, and the support for us as a Latinos, and within each other's businesses, as that. One is just because that's just the person I am, that I just really like to support our people, like, especially when it's somebody that comes from our culture doing this, because we don't see a lot of Latinos out here in this community, of like the cannabis community and all. So how is that for you going? I know you've done a lot with up elevated cocktails. I
Mm-hmm.
know, Three Trees as well. I know it's just you guys right now, but like, how is it going?
Um, so from that regard, I have through Carlos from Up Elevated Cocktail, I have connected with more Latino entrepreneurs.
Uh-huh.
because being able to collaborate with him on his events um, has introduced me, to a wide range, AK-47, and the flower dealer, Odali. So like, it's interesting and it's encouraging. So for me personally, um, uh, I've never specifically sought out um, like specifically black owned or brown owned
Hmm.
businesses. Um, it just so happens that I tend to run in those circles
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
my friends are Latinos or minority.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
But
of course.
it is encouraging because there's a lot of young people. I think for me that's the thing that I like seeing is there are a lot of young entrepreneurs. And I wish I had that entrepreneurial spirit, 20 years ago. But to see other people because you're able to carve out your path, and there's so much to learn as an entrepreneur. So to see young Black, Brown, and other minority owned businesses, it's pretty cool.
Hmm.
And that the fact that it's in a new space, in a new industry, right? That's also really encouraging because it could go so many ways, right? The hope is that it will go in an upward direction for everybody, and there'll be more equity throughout the industry. So that's the
Yeah.
hope. um, but the fact that people are making an effort, that's encouraging because it takes a lot of courage, right, to be an entrepreneur, to take a venture like that, because there is a lot of risk depending on how much the financial investment, not to mention the time investment into the thing that people are doing. So it's exciting for me to see, like I don't necessarily aspire, say for Mojo's or aim higher to be like this huge corporation or anything like that.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like we aim to be a resource, like a quality resource for anybody, right?
Hmm.
So if there's something we can do to enhance someone's knowledge or someone's experience or someone's process, then good. We just want to help to make the industry better, right? And maybe it won't ever be like on a very broad global reach, but
Okay.
whatever reach it does have, I'll be happy for that, right? Like, so the interactions that I've had, to me, that are the most encouraging for me are like when I come across somebody like, hey man, I didn't know that, and I'm glad that I was able to try this because it's helped me in X, Y, or Z way. Like for me, that is more valuable to me, say, than like physical currency, right? Because then
Hmm.
that says, oh, hey, this thing that I put out there, this energy that I put out there, it's useful. And that's what I want. I want for the business to be useful. I aim for utility, right?
Hmm.
The utility in the things that I do.
So I have like one question before we go to our last topic, which is the last topic is very interesting, man. Man. But so I know Mojo's 420 is like the cultivating and all of that. So aim higher, what's the aim higher? Like what brand is that like?
So aim higher, I want to say, is the lifestyle part of Mojo's, right? Like
Okay.
aim higher is the philosophy of Mojo's, and that really. So it's actually really deep, but on the surface, right?
Hmm.
Aim higher. The phrase itself, it seems like it's an encouraging, hey, do more, right? Um, but for me, it's about do better, right? It's do better, live better, be better, right?
Hmm.
And better doesn't necessarily mean more money or more fame, more friends, any of that. Better simply, at least to me, means you're closer to being your truer self or living your true life than you were yesterday, right? So it's kind of deconstructing all of the things that have been used to manipulate us throughout our lives, right?
Hmm.
Um, and that's hard, right? Because a lot of people, I feel like, have come to a point in their life where they realize, hey, you know what? I could benefit from a change. I just don't know how to do it, right? Like there's no models, there's no examples out there, or maybe not enough out there. And that's what I feel like I'm trying to achieve with Aim Higher. Is I want to challenge your thinking. I want to challenge because if you feel like you're not being as fulfilled from your life
Mm-hmm.
as you should be, um, then then changing your philosophy for life may improve that, right? So that's my hope that what Aim Higher can be.
No, yeah, and I think about just a little bit to what you're saying. That is like I think for once, self consistency is one thing that I think we everybody tends to lack on. Because we really are focused more on the out goal that when we're really in the journey or in the moment of doing something and it I guess doesn't seem to go the way that we expected, that's where we kind of tend to kind of just give up and not hold on. And I feel like that's something where I think it's more practice within ourselves and our mentality and our self-talk, like ourselves, to better that because we never know, if we give up doing what we love doing, even if it's giving income or not. If it's something you love doing, I feel like there's no reason for it to stop, for you to stop.
Yeah, and again, for me, the main thing is that whatever it is that you truly are being fulfilled by it. And I think that's my biggest measurement is like, are you deriving fulfillment from this, right? And
Hmm.
fulfillment doesn't always necessarily mean like happiness or like it means like literally fulfillment. Like, do you feel like this is feeding into your life in some form or fashion? Even through stress, right? Like stress can be fulfilling so long as it serves its purpose, right? In terms of your growth and your evolution. Um, and I feel like that's what I Aim Higher is trying to do. Is trying to help people assess things from an honest point of view
Hmm.
versus a prejudiced point of view. You know?
Gotcha, my guy. So before we get to our last topic, man, you want to take another hit or you're good?
Yo, yeah, let's do it.
Uh,
Let's
gotta
start this.
gotta just fucking go ahead and do it. What you? Oh, now he's smoking the J. Now he switched it up. He switched it up, ladies and gents. Different strain right there. The same one.
This is a different strain.
Okay,
So
what we got there?
in here, I was smoking sugar tips.
Sugar
So
tits,
this is
nice.
this was my most recent harvest from goat genetics. And this is my last harvest from goat genetics. This is goats are.
Okay, which like between those two, which one do you think is your favorite one,
Um,
or which one has a better
I,
taste, or if you can answer that?
better taste this one.
Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
I like the better taste in this one, but I want to say that this one's more fun. This one's more middle of the ground, kind of really keep me functional. I can be high and functional with this sugar tips, and that's what I like about it.
nice. That's a good name, though. Good strain name, Sugar Tits. And that's a
Yeah, I
good
just gotta be
segue.
careful. I just gotta be careful because fucking Instagram, if I put the name out there, they'll block it just because it says tits.
That's funny. That's hilarious, man. But yeah, I'm about to take this dab right now. Uh, I'm just there you go. Cheers, my guy. But before I go into this dab, other than cannabis, man, you told me you do or you're like what you do with that gets to do with like the sex and relationship development, my guy. Tell us a little bit about that.
Um, so I feel like um one of my biggest evolutions in my life is um in terms of like my relationship, right? My personal romantic relationship specifically. Um, and by that I mean uh I'm divorced. So my first marriage um didn't work out. Um, well, primarily because I was really young, but the at the core of it is, I was very selfish, and my expectations uh, were very unfair or imbalanced.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel like the relationship that I'm in now with my wife, um, it's so much better, right? Because I've evolved in the way that I relate. I've
Mm-hmm.
evolved in the way that what my expectations are for myself and from my spouse, um, and how I define um, love, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and my life is so much better because of it, And I talk with some of my friends and some associates, and I hear about like a lot of problems that they're going through in their younger relationships. Um, and I feel like, damn, bro, is it really that hard for us to be honest with each other? Is it really that hard to like look in the mirror and be honest with yourself about yourself, right? And that means being honest about all the good things and all the bad things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And either A, being accountable for them, or B, making an effort to move forward from there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel like I don't know, I'm so happy with the type of relationship that I have with my wife. And I wish that more people could experience that, right? Um, a certain level of honesty, a certain level of accountability, um, without being so critical, right? Um, and I want that, I want that for people that are in romantic. I want people to understand that level of care or love, really, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But I'm sorry, but what do you mean by this? Is this like in general, or is this like what do you mean by romantic? Like, is this like, uh, yeah? But what do you mean by that, my guy? Like,
um, well, I guess what I mean is um, how can I explain it? I've gone out of my way, right? So I was very destructive in my first marriage, right? I was a cheating husband. I was very selfish. I was very machista.
mm-hmm.
Um, I'm the male role, you're the female role, and this is how things should be.
Gotcha.
Um, and that's that. Now that I understand that life better, is I was very manipulating and very controlling. Like my efforts in that relationship were to be the boss, to be in control, and to have basically all the power and say in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I see that I see that in a lot of relationships, right? Like there's people trying to fill like certain roles. Oh, a man is supposed to do X, Y, and Z, and a female is supposed to do X, Y, and Z. Um, and that hard line type of approach, I feel like to a relationship, it's destructive, right? Because it doesn't really allow for flexibility. It doesn't allow for development of like of a joint, like a actual partnership, right? Because that's what I
Mm-hmm.
look like. That's what I look at my marriage with. It's a partnership, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there are like our individual selves and our individual goals and evolution, but our relationship is for sure a partnership. Like the there, I'm used to being burdened with the obligation of the role of a man, right? Like, oh, you're supposed to be the provider, you're supposed to be the defender, you're supposed to be the da 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 da. Bro,
Yeah.
that shit's exhausting. That shit is fucking exhausting, bro.
I'm
And
sure it
I
is.
and I lived that role, bro. I lived that role um, for a really long time, thinking that if I'm not doing that, I ain't shit, right? If I can't do that, because back in the day, that's what all the men did, and blah 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 bullshit, right? But the
Yeah.
truth of it is that if you do more to develop a partnership where that burden is shared, the financial burden, the protection burden, the whatever burden, um, you'll find that you both evolve in a way that feeds into each other. And to me, that has been such a magical thing in my current marriage,
Mm-hmm.
Um, And it's been a long road. And I had to make, me personally, I had to make a lot of mistakes. I lost a lot. I suffered a lot mentally, emotionally. Like, so this is a long, hard process. And if through example, right? Like through
Mm-hmm.
sharing my relationship and my experience with other people, my hope is that you could learn some of the lessons that I learned without having to go through any of the shit that I had to go through to learn those lessons, you know? And that comes through being able to relate with people more honestly, more openly, right?
Yeah.
Like my whole story, a large part of my story is very painful and it's very isolating. But it's not something that's easy to share, right? But if
Mm-hmm.
we can develop a relationship where we can learn to be honest with each other, and then I can feel comfortable, in sharing and maybe inspiring or helping you heal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then good. Then at least that shit that I went through is somehow being useful, to and so that's my hope in like when I open up about like more personal stuff like that. Because it's not
Gotcha.
easy, right? It's not easy for
Oh yeah.
anybody to talk at length or in depth about like mistakes that you've made in your life, um and so it's my hope is to kind of normalize that, right?
Yeah.
Because here's the thing is that if you can live in your truth, the power that people have to manipulate you, like, that's diminished. The ability for other people to manipulate you or to beat you over the head with your mistakes or try to hold you hostage, um, that goes away. And that allows you to be able to invest more time, more energy on your growth, on your development, or in your relationship.
Yeah. Gotcha. So, um, I know you said a lot, my guy. I was trying to seek all that in. I lost my train of thought here, and got a couple dabs in there. So so I know that I guess once like one makes a mistake, I mean, a relationship though, like I know it's always hard to like overcome it, or because it could be a small argument, a big argument. You know how sometimes it could get in a relationship. It could be small arguments to turn to big ones when it could have just then died down at the spark of it. Of course, we always do mistakes that causes major problems, but I feel like we should learn from it in a way, to how you say, to like how you were saying, to better yourself, try not to like repeat it again, because like I think with a lot of times, even in the when I was, I guess, younger, I mean, like us guys, I mean, we can, just seeing it could go from girl to girl to girl, but it's like there's never a time where it was like by yourself, like, or had time for yourself, because like you were too busy, or like one was too busy to like, just go after, point blank, just go after, at some ass, but again, I think that's just us as guys, as young guys and all, because I'm sure everyone, had a moment where they done something where it wasn't right, and I think if you're a type of person that has morals, or morals, because at the end of the day, a good guy could do a mistake that he didn't really mean to, but could affect it in a major way, than somebody who is really just like a type of person that just doesn't change from person to person, that would just do the same thing over and over.
Yeah, and I think that really at the core of it is like learning to be honest, right,
Mm-hmm.
with yourself. Like, and the thing that gets in the way of that, probably 10 times out of 10, is ego, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ego, and that's the thing. And in my experience, um, ego is the thing that gets in the way of evolution. Ego is the thing that gets in the way of honesty.
Mm-hmm.
Ego is the thing that gets in the way of accountability. And once you realize, like, bro, I invested and I sacrificed a whole lot in my life for ego. And I'm going to tell you, one of perhaps my biggest regrets in all of my life is giving up so much for the sake of my ego. Your ego ain't worth it. I promise you. I've spent a lot of time in isolation,
Hmm.
um, and ego just ain't worth it. And so shedding your ego, I feel like, is one of the best things you can do when you're trying to develop a partnership, a relationship, right? And really any partnership,
Hmm.
whether it's a business partnership or a romantic relationship. But
Hmm.
um, if you can reduce the size of your ego and make way for understanding or some empathy, man, you can accomplish a lot more than pushing um, your your own
Hmm.
your pride, your ego in those regards.
So I don't know. It's just because it's my immaturity, and I'm sorry. I swear I won't be immature after this, man. But what I'm just trying to get to, my guy, is that like I know it's about like sexual relationships and all, man. So it's like, do you consider yourself like you're a sex therapist, or like did you just taken a lot of sex ed classes before, or like,
Um, no, I look. I personally think they kind of go together,
uh-huh,
right? The better you connect with somebody,
yeah.
bro, you're my sex game, bro. I ain't gonna lie, bro. It's improved so much, but it's because
Uh-huh.
because you're able to be more honest with the person. You're able to connect so much more. Um, and so I feel like, for a lot of people, I think like if the sex ain't feeling right or is not as pleasurable, I feel like a lot of that is like more mental blocks than they are like physical blocks, right? and
Mhm.
and curating good relationships that feed your mind and your heart will lead to having I think better experiences. At least that's been my experience when it comes to sex. It's just that level of clarity that you have in your head, right? Like there's no uh, I'm not worried about like how I look or what I'm doing or this or that, or like all these worries and burdens ain't on the back of my head. It's like,
Yeah.
you're in the moment. So I feel like that kind of goes hand in hand on some level.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I think we make it harder for ourselves than we need to. And it all starts with just like really just looking in the mirror, man. Just standing in front of a mirror, looking in front of the mirror and being like, hey, am I in love with what I see in that mirror? Am I in love with all those scars and stretch marks and bruises and bumps and moles and
Uh,
freckles and
uh, uh,
everything that I'm looking at?
I'm sorry about bum high, but that's like you're telling yourself if you love yourself, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
okay, 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 okay. Sorry, it's just my stuck ass. But
yeah,
no,
yeah.
I agree
But that,
though, cause like, but like if you really do love it, like you self care yourself and all, like yeah, you're gonna feel better every single time. Your energy level is just off better than how it would be if you
yep,
just think straight negativity. But yeah, man, I do agree that like with like the more you're optimistic about yourself, because at the end of the day, it's like this is your life. Nobody ain't really gonna do nothing for it but yourself, other than just hear little opinions there and there. Um, but yeah. So, but other than that, what else like besides like this like for sexuality though, like do you have anything more? Like
um,
I'm not sure if that's like some deep to get into or not, my guy.
um, nah, I don't,
Okay,
I, yeah, I don't know, really what else to kind of add in that regard.
gotcha. But just it's pretty much it's just to just be straight up with your partner, and that's how you'll just make a better relationship.
Um, yeah,
Okay,
yeah. I mean,
I gotcha.
I
Uh-huh.
mean, I mean, at the end of the day, right? Like when we talk about like where we're investing our time, our energy, our money, right? Like they should match, right? So if I tell you that this thing or this person is important to me,
Mm-hmm.
and you look at my phone log, you look at my email log, you look at my bank account, and I'm not investing time or money or energy into that thing or that person, um, then that should tell you like what the truth really is, right? Because I could talk a lot of game, I could give you a lot of bullshit,
Mm-hmm.
but I need receipts. Like I'm now the type of person I need receipts. So if I tell you that you matter to me, that means I'm spending time with you. I'm calling you. I'm checking in on you. I'm sending a message to whatever, and so those things should match, and it should be a reflection. If what you say matters to you, you
Mm-hmm.
should be taking the time to learn that better, right? If I say I love cannabis, well, then I should be making an effort to learn more about it, and that's what I do. Like if you look at my phone logs, if you look at my web history, you're gonna see all the research articles or the whatever that I'm looking into, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
I say that I care about my wife or I love my wife, then I should be making an effort to understand her better so that I can communicate in a way that feeds to her, right? And I say that in a way because I communicate with my plants. My plants communicate with me. They let me know when they're healthy. They let me know when they're struggling. They let me know if there's a problem. Um, but it's taken effort. It's taken effort from me to learn the language of my plants, right? Because they don't speak English, right? We don't
Mm-hmm.
talk,
Yeah, yeah.
but there's a vibrational communication that happens between us. The same thing happens with my dogs. My dogs don't speak, but we communicate in a way where I understand because they matter to me, because I love them, because I care about them, right? And I want to do good by them. So
Gotcha.
these things, right? These flowers, these plants, or these animals that I go out of my way to learn their language and to learn how they communicate so that I can learn what's important for them or to them.
Mm-hmm.
Then, if I say I love my wife, or if I say I love my friend, or if I say I love then I should be going out of my way to be able to meet them where and how they communicate, right? Because not everybody is able to communicate the same way, right? Not everybody is able to express themselves the same way. And sometimes the things that I say might not be received the way that I intend them if the person doesn't have the same communication style. So, from a relationship standpoint, it shouldn't be that hard for me if I say that I love somebody because all of my passions I go out of my way for.
Mm-hmm.
So all the more so for a person that has the ability to reciprocate in the same way, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I guess that's what I'm saying is I see it. I see how I make an effort for the things I care about, and I should do that too in my relationship if I say I love somebody.
Okay. I got you, my guy. Well, I think like before I think we wrap it up and all, do you have any questions for us or anything else you want to talk about before we wrap it up?
Nah, man, I swear to God, if you don't cut me off, I'll keep talking, bro, because I could talk
Yeah.
forever, bro. But
Yeah, man. I think that's pretty much it, my guy, so far.
well, no, I mean, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you bringing me on and
Mhm.
introducing me to your audience. I always have a good time sharing, in conversations and stuff. So I'm happy to come back anytime.
Hell yeah, my
But
guy. We'll be down to have you more another time again. I know it's summertime and a lot of shit
yeah,
going
bro,
on
I'm
in
gonna be.
Chicago. Uh-huh.
Matter of fact, I'm gonna be at the Up Elevated Cocktail Club on Friday. So if you haven't
Okay.
seen that, or if you could pop
Uh-huh.
up there,
Okay. I'll see. I'll try because that day I'm working, but I'll see if I got time to slide by.
okay,
I know from the last event, which was the 420, that shit was popping. So
yeah, 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 yeah.
I know that I'm sure that's gonna be popping too. But yeah, my guy. Again, but thank you for coming to Canna Vibe and giving us your time. Um, but yeah, hopefully everyone out there will probably see you guys to the next episode or vlog. And don't forget to follow my guy at Mojo's 420's Instagram. I'll
Yeah,
leave that in the
Mojo. So
subscription. Uh-huh.
Mojo's underscore 420 on Instagram, and then our website, www.mojos420.com.
All right, then there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I'll leave that as well in the description. And yeah, so we'll see you guys the next time. Have a good one. Thank you.
Stay blessed.